Good evening and welcome. Welcome back after a little mini international break. Stella had a little journey out to Spain. I've got back from Italy, Sicily, about 20 minutes ago. All very nice. So we're all recharged. I'm relying on every one of the flock and Stell to give me the lowdown on Saturday, top of the table. The weather was very nice in Sicily, but we had a freak monsoon of which raindrops the size, quite literally, of ice frozen golf balls took the entire Wi-Fi network of our hotel out. So I couldn't even watch it, and I couldn't even listen to you, Stel. So I must admit, I was relying on Chloe on WhatsApp. I kept getting all these score flashes that I could scarcely believe. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment. News two: the Magpie Redemption book launch date. It will be available as an ebook only. Not printing it this time like One Flew Over the Magpie's Nest. The launch date for that is Monday, October the 9th. It will be available to pre-order on Amazon and Kindle from tomorrow. So I'll be posting the link tomorrow. You can pre-order that and make sure you get it first. 85,000 words. If you like it, I wrote it. If you think there's loads of errors and it's all rubbish, it was Lee Curtis that edited it. Okay, there we go. So we'll publish the details tomorrow. And we've got a special Magpie Circle broadcast. Can't give too much away at the minute. That will be coming up next week ahead of the book launch. Your thoughts on Saturday, as always, please. Looking ahead to the short journey to Colchester on Saturday, Swindon at home on the Tuesday, and then Barrow on Saturday. You always say after 10 games, you'll know where you have a much better chance of knowing where we will be. I gather there's been one or two interesting incidents on Twitter over the weekend as well. Never dull, is it? Let's rattle through a quick few comments and then get the thoughts of Mr. Stallard. Wayne Wilkins tuning in from Barcelona. Very good evening to you all. Very good evening, Wayne. It's Jarius. Let's be having you, Paul. I'm here. Only just. Alex Jackson, evening all. Andrew Blatherwick, greetings. Rich Hawksworth, evening. Pulsating game on Saturday. A few shaky moments again defensively, but great to see such a cutting edge up front. What a week it's been. Karen Knight, hello everyone. Evening from Ian Cooksey. Stephen Newton, evening all. Kay saying thoughts on Connell's outburst on Twitter. Well, I'm sure we'll come to that. Andrew Blatherwick, Dan Crowley to be top scorer. We seem to have a bit more grit this season and toughness, says it's Sharius. I'm loving the Ditsy and Crowley combo. We're looking good. Defensively still a little fragile, but we're getting there. Evening all from Ian Birchnell. Never in doubt Saturday, was it? Chris Gosling, the Fab Four of Jones, Crowley, Didsey and Macca once again showing we must be one of the most potent teams in the division. Macca and Didsey to tie in terms of goals, but get beat by Crowley headers, says Ian Birchnell. Great to see Stell back, says Ian Birchnell. And on cue, Stell leaves.
I've just had to let the dog out. He comes in and then he starts pouring at the door, doesn't he, to get out? It's almost like he's heard enough. I don't know, that's a review or whatever. 3 minutes in, he's heard enough.
Athenian Pie, good evening all. Can't wait for this weekend. 5 a.m. flight into Gatwick for my first game since we have returned. Very good. Good luck coming up from Gatwick. I flew into there. I landed about 3:30 this afternoon, Athenian Pie. It's not always... Well, you can't go on the train anyway, can you, Saturday? Because... there's no train. So, yes, we're talking about the boxing, says Chris Gosling, rather less cryptically. I think we'll have a better idea of where we will finish, says Chris B, after October. So far, so good, but some better informed teams to come. Ian Birchnell, the biggest compliment I can pay Forest Green is they made us look very average second half and played us at our game. They surely have to climb the table playing like that. Gary Lee, don't think we did enough to win the game on Saturday. I will take the win though. Second half, we forgot to press and pass. Immense from JJ Crowley and Bostonian. Stell, you're at the game. 4-3. I think you were just telling me before we went to there that Forest Green hit the bar at 4-3. What's your takeaway from Saturday?
Well, a few things, to be honest. I mean, it was the stereotypical game of two halves almost, not absolutely controlled the first half. Scored the 2 goals. If anything, like I was saying to you, if anything, you would argue they maybe didn't create as many clear-cut chances as the domination of the game in terms of possession. We know our Notts are, people who weren't at the game can almost imagine the sort of possession that Notts had. Really good control of the game. And from 2 crosses, we're really clinical, put 2 chances away. Dan Crowley with his header, 3rd header, 4th goal of the season, 3 headers. And then Macca doing what Macca does from a great cross from, it was Jody, wasn't it, for his goal. So, 2 good goals and worthy 2-0 lead at half-time. And at half-time, I don't think anybody could have foreseen what was going to happen in the second half because, credit to Forest Green, right from minute 1 of the second half, they came out and asked questions of Notts, and Notts never had control in the second half, really, save for a few minutes here and there. They had a great start, got back on level terms. So then you go from control to Notts had to show character. They had to dig deep, and they did that. They got 2 quick goals themselves, got back to 4-2, and you think, well, it's going to be plain sailing from here now. We just control the game out, but there was none of that. Forest Green wouldn't allow it. Notts weren't able to do that. And they got back to 4-3. I mean, there's some defensive frailties shown in the second half, but again, Forest Green with 2 down, they sort of had to throw men at it. So, it's easy to say, well, after the event, if they weren't 2 down, would they have done that? They didn't do that at 0-0 in the first half. So you sort of expect that, but Notts need to weather that a little bit better. But they got over the line. They got over the line. Second half wasn't great. There's plenty to work on, but all you can do is win a game that's in front of you. You're never going to play perfectly for 90 minutes every week. They played really well first half, second half, not so well, but got over the line. And that's what good teams do. They get over the line.
I mean, clearly, when we look back to that first game of the season and you think, oh, dear me, right, have we underestimated everything? The club is now, let's just, pinch ourselves a little bit here, top of the table, and had to get over the finishing line not too easily on Saturday, but did. I mean, early doors, would you say Notts deserve to be top from what you've seen of other teams we've played and other matches you'll have seen in highlights here and there?
They deserve to be top because they are. I mean, I don't. If you said, well, they don't. I've not seen enough of any other team to say, oh, not so lucky. No, not there because they deserve to be. That's the way the league table always works. Granted, I'm not going to read too much into it because there's only 9 games gone. There's a long, long way to go, and not everybody's played everybody. So you can't judge too much this early in the season, but they certainly deserve to be there because a bit like Saturday, they've played with quality at times, but they've also had to roll their sleeves up at times. We all know about the first game of the season and thought, cracky, if we'd have been sat top after 9 games, we'd have thought you'd have been joking. So they deserve to be there. But I think I said on commentary on Saturday that what Saturday's game, amongst a few other things that have had, but Saturday's game shows me the difference between the National League and League Two. And in terms of that, I mean, if Notts had been 2-0 up at home against anybody in the National League, you would have thought, as we probably did a little bit on Saturday, oh, that's game over, done and dusted. It's just a question of whether they go and get a 3rd or a 4th, whether the other team even have a go or do they just sit back, damage limitation. There's none of that from Forest Green. And I don't think you're going to get any of that in League Two. You're going to have teams that will back themselves. They're all over the park. They're just slightly fitter, slightly better, probably better organised in general, and just better quality, more threats in both, well, certainly in the attacking penalty area than you expect to come up against, or we did come up against in the National League. So I think it shows you and highlights the difference between National League and League Two. It's not a milestone, a massive stepping stone, if you like, but it shows you that there are going to be a lot more real gritty games. Even when you play well, it's not done, not dead and buried. It's not a foregone conclusion. So I think each week it's going to be a tougher test. And I think if we're absolutely honest, looking back at the National League, there are a few games and a few weeks where you can say, as long as we turn up and do the job for 45 minutes, that's going to be game over. And so it proved, so it proved last season particularly. So the strength in depth in League Two is, as we've said right from the start of the season, it's going to be deeper. You look at where Notts have played, the sort of the bottom teams, and say, who'd have thought Sutton would, well, until Saturday, wouldn't have got another point after beating us 5. So, I think it's a far more competitive league from top to bottom. But it's not just about quality; it's about grit and character and getting over the line, as it is at any level. But I think Saturday showed that in a 90 minutes, where 45 minutes was quality controlled, and 45 minutes was backs to the wall. Let's see what you're made of, and they came out on the right end of it.
Evening all, says James Moore. Do I have to pay a fine for being late? We'll let you off. He adds, we've been used to teams raising their game when they come to Meadow Lane in the past. Stel, strikers critique. Look, first game I've missed. So once again, I can't do every single game of the season. It always seems to elude me. I've always had a lot of time for Troy Deeney. I quite like the guy. I think he speaks openly. From what I can see, has put a shift in down the years. He was very complimentary about Notts afterwards. I mean, did he cause Notts? I mean, clearly the fact he scored all the goals. How many problems did he cause us, and what did you think of him?
Honestly, I would say it's quite easy to be polite after you've just scored a hat-trick.
Yeah, absolutely, I get that. Yeah.
I mean, not that I know particularly much, but I'm sure it is.
You were always very polite after you snuck 3 in, weren't you?
Exactly, yeah, absolutely. Both times that happened. No, he first off, no, didn't cause us a problem really. Notts controlled the game, and the way Luke Williams' team plays, we all know, is if you control the ball, you're controlling the game largely, and doesn't matter who's in the opposition's team. If you've got the ball, they're not going to hurt you. So we were passing it around, moving the ball well, and Troy Deeney barely had a kick first off. In fact, you thought he's going to get fed up at this, not just passing around him not getting near the ball. But then second half, again, it's not just about one player, but it's his team sort of went on the front foot a little bit more, threw a few more bodies forward, had to, 2-0 down, I always say, easiest time to play, pressure's off, you're still in the game. If you get the next goal, it's in the melting pot, but nothing's expected of you. And that's how it proved. But he was the one who put the ball in the back of the net, and he's he's got that quality. Like David McGoldrick, he's played at the top level, and he scored plenty of goals over his career at every level. So he finished chances. I mean, I think more so from a Notts point of view, the goals we conceded weren't good. And I know every coach will say that. Every goal that's conceded can be stopped, can be prevented, but 2 were from set pieces. 2 from corners again, and the first one just taken short, a low ball in. The organisation isn't right, the marking isn't right. That Troy Deeney's able to pick the ball up, 8 or 9 yards back to goal, hold off a defender and spin and put it in the bottom corner. No, that can't be right. You need to get somebody in front or at least side on to push him away from goal. When he does get it, you've got to keep him away from goal, not allow him to turn and shoot. And the second one, just a long hanging ball to the there you get. We're gone. Are we back?
Don't worry.
Yeah. First contact, they get a little header down into an area. I mean, it's not overly dangerous, but again, first contact keeps it alive. And then there's a bit of chaos. He hooks it over his shoulder, a bounce, and it goes in. And all of a sudden, they're 2 very preventable goals, and it could cost you. It could cost you 2 points. It could have cost us 3 points. Sadly, you just never know. So, thankfully, we had the response, and the one for the penalty is a little bit clumsy, a little bit, a bit clumsy defending from Connell, sticking a leg out. It was soft. And it's the sort of penalty that gets given to a team when they're 4-2 down. But it probably was. There wasn't too many remonstrations about it. But again, it was just a few concerning signs in that second half of when the first half I don't think they had a shot on target first half. So we restricted them really well. But again, you've got to have control of the football. And I think the thing that Luke Williams wouldn't have been happy with was the fact that the second half was chaotic. It was like end to end, like a basketball game at times. Forest Green, you would say, had the better of it, and could argue. And I've seen their managers post match. He's arguing that they should have come away with something. They could have come away with something. I don't think over the 90 minutes, I don't think they would have deserved it, but they could well have come away with a point.
Let's talk on the positives. Striker's critique from you as one of the top 10 all-time greatest goal scorers in Notts County's history. Mr. McGoldrick, Mr. Langstaff, I threw something out at the start of the show. Who finishes top scorer for you this season?
I think Macca. I think Macca will finish top scorer, just, again, purely based on the position that he plays. He's in them positions to play within the penalty area, the lines of the penalty area. As you saw, his goal on Saturday, it was a lovely ball in. I mean, the first two goals, lovely ball in. David McGoldrick, Jody Jones, great balls in. I mean, it doesn't matter, if you put balls in with that quality, you'll score a number of goals, no matter who's there. But I think, if Macca stays fit, I think because of the position he's playing, he's going to get the bulk of the chances. But hopefully, David McGoldrick, Dan Crowley are pushing him all the way, in them slightly withdrawn roles, because they've shown, was it Macca on 5 and the other 2 on 4 each? We've shown that we've got real attacking threats. And you've got to, because they all help each other score goals. Because if you've just got Macaulay Langstaff who scores goals, then it's easier for a half-decent defence to sort of organise against that. Whereas if you've got 3 forward players, a sort of spearhead of a 3, and 2 of them are playing in little pockets that are difficult to pick up and in between the lines, and they're not sitting in rigid formations, then that's harder to pick up. And opposition have got to be aware of them as well. So they can't just focus everything on Macca. Now, Macca will benefit from having the other 2 there, and obviously the other 2 will benefit from having a spearhead like Macca up front. So it's working well so far. What was it? 13 goals between the 3 of them in 9 games. If that carries on, doesn't matter who's top scorer, does it? But as long as they keep scoring at that rate, we'll be halfway being successful.
What do you see? What's the critique of David McGoldrick from what you've seen of him so far in a Notts shirt this season?
Yeah, I mean, he's quality, isn't he? You can see he's got quality. He rarely loses the ball. That's one thing. You can trust him with the ball. I think it's the second goal, I think, on Saturday, where he just gets involved on that little inside left channel, sort of 30 yards from goal. And he just gives, I think he exchanges pass with Jody Jones, goes on the overlap. And you see the defenders, all 3 or 4 defenders around, just go with the ball, go back towards their own goal byline a little bit. And he just steps away, just 2 or 3 yards, just simple, but steps away from the defenders, away from the goal to give himself a little bit of space. Ball comes back to him, he has a touch and bends in, just a superb, put me in the back of the net ball. And that's the sort of quality he's got. Then you see his finishing, his composure. Again, not the hardest finish in the world, but composure in the second half. And the match-winning goal, as it turned out to be. So, but he's tidy. He's one of them players that is in the team, and the teammates will know they can give him the ball and trust him. He won't lose it very often, and he'll be looking to create something. He'll be a player that the opposition look to try and snub out. That can create spaces for others. He's a good age, 35, is he? But he still gets around the pitch. He's not, he's not one of them that we carry in and we're having to do extra running because he's there. None of that whatsoever. He's put in a shift in, and like I say, he's been nothing less than we would expect so far. And I think he'll probably only get better. I don't think even he'll say he's been at his best, but he's been absolutely fine. He's been a real star performer along with Dan Crowley. He's been a fantastic addition. And Macca, well, you sort of know what you're going to get with him.
James Moore says the biggest tell of how good McGoldrick has fitted into the team is, until now, no one is mentioning Ruben. How unorthodox was Macca's goal, says James as well. Bruce Lee would have been proud of that flying kick. He has the ability to flick it off his little toe or whatever and find the back of the net. Adi Clark, greetings, Adi. Must be one of the strongest, not the best, attacking football teams in the league, and fully deserve to be top. Slight negative, don't feel that we will necessarily keep too many clean sheets. How realistic, achievable, Stel, is it that you could be looking at both Macaulay and Didsey with 20 goals this season each?
Well, the way they've started, you could be looking at them two, and Dan Crowley. The way Notts play, and it's so consistent of a way of playing, that they get themselves into positions where if you put quality on the final ball, you will create chances. It's just such a fluid way of playing that we've seen it from time and they've got the quality. It's like everything. It's got to be done with quality. There's not just a blueprint of A pass to B, pass to C, run here, and then you're definitely going to get in, because teams set up differently against you as well. You've got to have the quality to do it, but there is a framework in place for the players to know. And don't forget, Saturday we didn't have Aaron the man for his pace down the right-hand side, and I know Sam Austin-Cunliffe did really well as well. But that's a weapon that Luke Williams likes to use. That all managers really like, pace in them wide areas. But they still get in the areas. Toby Adebayo, when he comes on, he's put the ball in for John Bostock's third goal. That the keeper parries out. It's the little give and go with sort of Dan Crowley playing the ball in between fullbacks. You see that sort of movement and that sort of shape and that sort of position so often for Notts, and it's because they recycle the ball, they move it quickly, and they set themselves up where they know what they're looking to do. And at times the opposition, although they might know where they're looking to go, there's not too much you can do if it's done with quality. So you'll get in them positions. Like I say, Notts will create chances. It's just about, I say Notts, as long as the quality is good enough, they will always create chances. And then it's about how many of them chances do you put away. And that was something I said about the first half. They really created two clear-cut chances and put them both away. There were gilt-edged chances. I mean, you'd expect to score them both. If you were being hypercritical, you'd say, for all the play we had, could we have created something a little bit more? Yes. But on the positive side, we created two clear-cut chances and put them both away. Now, that's clinical. So that's the way Luke Williams' team will play, since he's come here. I don't see that changing. So I do think that as long as they can maintain the standards, maintain the quality, they've got enough attacking threats individually and as a team to mean that they'll keep creating chances and scoring goals. And if you score goals, you've always got a chance.
Dale Pikett says Notts are the most successful team in history to be promoted into League Two and have 20 points after 9 games. I mean, we think we lost the first game 5-1. That is even more of an accomplishment. Stella, I remember start of the season, you and I. What would you take? What would you view as success this season? I think both of us were of a mindset that get into the playoffs, then it's a really good season. It's inevitable. Social media, the world in which we live, we judge teams game by game, don't we? And Sutton, oh my goodness, we're going to struggle to stay up. We're now winning, so we're going to be. I've read somewhere we're going to be champions. Where are you? How much emphasis is? What's your take on all of this? Would you still just be happy with playoffs, or do you raise the bar any higher?
I don't change. I don't change it because of what we've seen so far. Not in 9 games. In 39 games, I might change my mind, but not now. I don't think we should start banging extra pressure on them because they've got off to a good start. I don't change until I've seen every team in this division. Then I'm not going to change. I'm going to say in and around the playoffs would be a success. In the playoffs, obviously that would be the aim, and obviously in the changing room that'll be different. They'll be setting the bar higher, but I think for fans and to try and unwind a little bit of pressure that can be loaded onto football teams, which causes its own problems. It never helps when you put extra pressure on them. I think, why should it change because they've got off to a decent start? That's all it is. We're 6 points from 10th. So it can change quickly. It can change unbelievably quickly. So they've got off to a great start, but that's all it is. And with Luke Williams and Ryan Harley and the mentality that the players have got, they won't be looking at it as anything more than that. It's a good start. They're above that 2 points a game, threshold that we always sort of talk about if you want to be there or thereabouts. But there's a long, long way to go. So no, I don't change anything. That's the sort of requirement for me for a good successful season would be playoffs minimum. Playoffs there or thereabouts as a minimum. But I would also want them to think, we have got a chance of promotion. They're not going to be happy just with the playoffs. They're going to be aiming higher. But, let's not put pressure on them because that can only be derogatory. It doesn't help them. And I think at the minute, what Notts have got going, as a club is absolutely fantastic. 10,500 there, averaging over 10,000, and that's, there's a couple of hundred, weren't they, from Forest Green on Saturday? They're all Notts fans, and that's a sort of reward for what the players have produced, but what Luke Williams has done since he's come into the game, come into Notts as a club, and the recruitment and the owners, they deserve that, certainly over the moon for them to have it. But we want to keep that going. We don't want to loads of pressure on. Oh, right, now we top after 9 games. Anything less than automatic is going to be a disaster. That's not the case. This division is going to be tighter. We won't run away with this like I think the National League we could have done. It wasn't Wrexham could have done. So it's going to be tighter. There's going to be blips along the way, a bit like the second half on Saturday, a bit like the first game against Sutton. There's going to be them blips, but it's about that consistency. As every season is over 46 games, and as long as Notts can keep that consistency without us piling loads of pressure on them now, a fifth of the way through the season, then I think we could be pleasantly surprised. But let's just leave it at that at the minute, because we haven't seen, there's going to be some tough teams to play and tough games, and things won't go swimmingly all season, I'm sure.
Still, we both know there's not a cat in hell's chance of that happening, don't we? We know that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that's it. But why can't we try and manage expectation? Because do you know what? We might just be, whisper it quietly, might be on the cusp of something really good here. Again, we've already had something really good, but let's not jinx it. Let's not, put any undue pressure on players that are playing well, playing really attractive football, getting bums on seats, getting people paying to come and watch them. That's what it is. It's entertainment, but you want to win. Average crowd of over 10,000 at Meadow Lane, like I say, that's fantastic. That's exactly the momentum you can build coming in from the National League on success. But you have to keep it going. You have to keep pushing and driving. And the minute you start going, oh, well, if we're not top of the table, that's not good enough, then that'll all start waning away a little bit. And you think, let's try and take the pressure off a little bit. And you just never know.
Yeah, I mean, I old timer like me, I can hear the words reverberating in my head about how Jimmy Siddle would say, and bear in mind they had 2 promotions in 4 years, always were doing well, and he would never ever countenance any discussion about promotion at any point of the season, certainly not until January. And he would always talk about getting, I think it used to be in those days, 40, 45 points to stay up. That was the first objective. And it was all designed, wasn't it, to keep a tin lid on things. But being realistic, it's so much harder to do now, isn't it? It's so much harder. You to an extent get judged on your last 90 minutes. I mean, I know in theory you always do, but God forbid, if we didn't win the next 3 games, people would be saying, "Oh, we've got to sign this, we've got to do that, we've got to do this." It's so volatile, isn't it? And I think the point you make about Forest Green coming here 2-0 on. I wasn't there, but I detect from what you're saying, on another given Saturday, we very easily could not have won that game.
Well, very easily, yeah. I mean, given the second half, on another day, we walk out 4-0 winners comfortably as well. That's the beauty. All the talk about it, and you say, I think like social media, the volatility you're talking about, the assessment after each game, there's that much analysis, that much assessment of everything. That football's always been like that. Ups and downs along the way. It changes week by week. But I think nowadays in the modern era, that is just magnified by a factor of about 50, because you've got all and sundry can post a public opinion on everything, and you can have disagreements, arguments about everything. For people that just want to throw their 2 penneth worth in, it's such a magnified arena that they're playing in, that the pressure's there as it is. And I think they don't need it. You look at the league table and you go, well, the proof that it could change is I don't think we've played anybody else out of the top 7 yet. Anybody else now you could argue mathematically, well, that's because we've beat most of the teams we've played, so that's why they're not in the top 7. But so you can't judge anything. Jimmy Cyril's not the only manager that ever said, I'm not talking about promotion until January. Most managers throughout time will try and kick that can down the road because they don't want to tempt fate. They don't want to put additional pressure on themselves or the players or the club. So, that's just a standard football answer. But, it is true. It is absolutely true. You've won nothing. Being top of the table, nobody's ever won an award for being top of the table in September. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't count for anything other than mark it down as a good start to the season. End of.
You threw a few links really that I don't really want to. I want to focus on Notts, and I don't want to talk about gossip, fugazi, whatever you want to call it, pixie dust. But look, let's just deal with it now, because it does seem to have caused quite a lot of traction over the weekend in relation. And I'll be interested on your view, Stel, if social media had been around in your day and how you may or may not have dealt with it. So Connell has decided to post a tweet back at Tom Williams. Tom's a big Notts fan. I guess the phrase is a content creator. So Tom would do a lot of video analysis. Tom would make a lot of comments, opinions, do, synopses of games straight after the games. And I think he's very respectful. But I think, without wishing to draw, point fingers here, because I see both sides, I think you mentioned the point. So many people want to have their own opinions. And everything gets magnified. And at the one level, you have the elite level pundits like yourself, and at a lot of online content creators, in the case of Tom, looking to create a living for himself. Fair play to him by charging nominal sums of money for his content. Why shouldn't he? Always wish everyone the best for trying to create their own employment. In doing that, it's hard not to be opinionated. Yeah, it's hard not to be opinionated. And so a lot of these content creators throw quite a lot of, while they're respectful, specific comments. Notts aren't good enough on defensive transitions, and I don't like all this praise for Dan Crowley. Ruben Rodriguez is a better player. All of that sort of stuff that comes out. And their opinions. Now, Connell, at about 1:30 on Saturday morning, has obviously something's got under his skin a little bit, and he's dug out Tom and had a bit of a dig. And I can kind of understand Connell's frustration. I'm not sure it was the best way of explaining it, but if so many people have a view on how you do your job, why should you not? My own personal view, why should you not have the option to be able to make your own point of view about the job that they're doing? Yeah, because for time immemorial, fans are allowed to berate, abuse, do all sorts of things to footballers, and you're not supposed to have a reply, a right of reply. Or the moment you do, people batter you. I guess in your day, I don't know whether you had any scrapes with the local reporter or whatever it was, but that was kind of where the dynamics sat, wasn't it? Nowadays, everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a view on how you are doing your job. What do you make of it all?
Yeah, that's the modern world, isn't it? Everybody's got an opinion on everything, and everybody's an expert on everything. Do you know what I mean? Nobody gives an opinion thinking it's wrong, myself included. Right, so you're saying elite level pundit. I'm not sure about that, but everyone's entitled to an opinion. This is the thing, and football has always created, as you said there, Paul. Football has always had people having opinions. The difference, the biggest difference now, as to probably when I played, and even before that, is that it was opinions that people had down the pub, walking to the game, walking from the game, at the game. Whenever, but they had no way of letting the whole world know it. It was only those within sort of social circles that ever got to hear their opinion, and very rarely would that ever filter back to players or anything like that. The difference is now social media, in a nutshell, social media, and probably as a result of all the analysis and the punditry of the BBC and Sky and all the major coverage, which has just exploded, so it's everywhere you see it, that you say you've got people having their own goes at it. And why shouldn't they? Absolutely do the analysis, do your own versions of it. Because, again, there's some great quotes of comedians that I like and things like that. Opinions are like bumholes. Everyone's got one. Everyone's got an opinion, and people are not shy of letting you hear theirs. But you turn the tables. I'm thinking of it used to be the journalists. They'd always the journalists would write about football and have their opinions, and again, they've got to sell copy, haven't they? They've got to sell papers. So it would no use having an opinion week after week saying, well, yeah, they were all right. Yeah, he was all right, and they were all right. So you start going, well, he was terrible, and they start using words like disgraceful and all that sort of thing, and then it mushes, and so we get to where we are today, where everything has got to be either up here or down there. There's almost there's no sort of reason and sort of giving people a break. Now, I've not seen. Let me tell you right from the get-go, I'm not aware of Conor Rawlinson on what he said on social media, what's been said to him, what it's about. I've no idea, Paul. First I know about it was you saying it. So you'll have to explain to me maybe what's happened or what's been said. But let's not forget, Conor will have played a game. Well, he can't come on, but he's played the game on Saturday. He's a professional. He'd probably be half one if he's done it half one on Saturday. He's probably struggling to sleep because of the adrenaline. You don't sleep so well. It's not automatically if he's up at half one, he's obviously on the pop or had a drink or whatever. That's not the case necessarily. It's more a case of your adrenaline keeps you awake. And I suppose, if people are writing negative stuff and you're seeing it, then, hey, you can have a nibble at it. You can have a bite at it. I think Jim O'Brien did he last season at a certain point again, but that might have been, again, if it becomes personal as well, then, hey, social media is for all people. Just because you're a footballer, I don't buy into this thing that I've heard people say, if you're a footballer, stick to football. Well, hold on a minute. If you're a plumber, you don't have to stick to plumbing. And if you're a solicitor, you don't have to stick to legal jargon. So if it's social media, you can put whatever you want on there. So, look, my way of dealing with it, as you said at the start, I would just, as I do now, I just don't see much of it. I don't do it. I don't really, I'm aware of it and I'm on it, but I'm not on it, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I would just, back away from it. Back in the day, the equivalent of my day.
Yeah, did you have any run-ins? Did you ever like grab hold of a predecessor of Lee Curtis and said, why did you only give me a 3 out of 10?
No, well, just about to say the pre-Curtis. No, I never did that because I knew. The reality is that, I mean, it used to be that I think it was the Sun and the Mirror used to do on a Monday. Used to do like the pull-out section, and there'd be marks out of 10 for every game. You knew full well they'd only got reporters at the Premier League games and probably some of the Championship, and the rest of it they were just guessing based on what the scoreline was. There was no way somebody was in Meadow Lane every week going, "Oh, Stallard was a 4 this week," which was better than he was 2 weeks ago. Let me tell you. And the thing is, but some players in training on Monday would get the papers and they'd take proper umbrage about it. Whereas me, I like, chances are that there's nobody there. They've just rolled a dice and come up with a number. That's probably why my best mark was 6. But it never bothered me. But I've always been quite thick-skinned. I just never really paid too much attention to it. So I think you've got to be your own biggest critic in terms of football performances. When you've had a good game. When you've made mistakes. You've only got to please your manager and yourself, and then the fans after that. But it's very difficult because I can't comment on getting a load of a stick or abuse or whatever it is on social media because I've thankfully never had it. I might be getting it for this, Paul. It must be a few years of doing this in the radio, but I don't read too much of it, so it just doesn't come back to me. But it's a difficult one. It is a difficult one because like I say, my old school reaction would be if I was a player, I wouldn't be on social media at all. I'd clap the fans. I'd thank the fans. Always fronted up, even if they were wanting to boo and you'd not played well. But that would be it. I wouldn't then want to be, looking at my phone at midnight and going, "Oh, blimey, heck, he's called me rubbish," or Lee Curtis has marked me down again, or whoever it was. No, that never bothered me. the biggest struggle I had was after I had bad games and I had plenty of them, was playing it over and over in your own head at 3 in the morning of that night and the next night and whatever, and trying to leave it behind. But it's a different world now, and you've got to accept that everyone will have an opinion and everyone is entitled to share that opinion, but opinions are not facts. And that's something that has to be hammered home. Opinions are different to facts. We've all got opinions, and I've got opinions, but I know they're not facts. They're not factually correct. Other people will disagree with. You could have another footballer or ex-footballer sat alongside me going, I disagree. I saw it different Saturday. And that's the beauty of sport. You can see everything differently and everyone can take something out of it. But, it's then about filtering, what you want to listen to, what you don't.
James Shipley, in any business, customers are allowed their opinion. Businesses should not have an opinion on the customer. Matt Arnold says Connell's comments were stupid. Tom posted an opinion on the boxing. No need to come back the way Connell did. Ian Cooksey, Paul, we remember Bob Worthington, a legendary left back for Notts in the 70s, being made a scapegoat by fans at the County Road end. What you omit to mention, Ian, was that after he scored his only goal in 230 appearances for Notts, he ran over to the aforementioned side of the ground stell and dropped his shorts and did a movement. No social media, but I think they got the message.
That's one way of doing it, yeah. Did he get a yellow card? Back then, I don't imagine that's a yellow card, is it?
Chris Gosling, isn't social media, including platforms like this, just fans putting forward opinions? Doesn't mean they're right, and sensible people can discuss from both sides of the fence. I enjoy sensible debate. Andrew Blatherwick, the only opinion Connell hang on, it's a good point. The only opinion Connell should worry about is that of Luke Williams. Fans have always had their favourites and their pantomime villains. I think that's spot on. Ian Cooksey, God forbid you ever slaughtered any of Jimmy Cyril's players. He would soon tell you to back off or something like that, or worse. Chris G. Says Ian Birchall, I also enjoy sensible debate. I do like to hear what others think about us, especially the neutrals. Chris B. I don't think Tom even said anything directly about Connell, just he was disappointed with our performance. And one or two others. It's certainly unprofessional from Connell, says Nathan. No need for it, but he deleted the tweet. So we move on, all part of the same team. Yesterday's chip paper, says Stephen Newton. Ian Cooksey, be interesting to see some fans' reaction to Connell on Saturday. For me, I'm right behind him as he plays for my club. Wayne Wilkins, what about fans having a pop at the club on social media for some services that haven't gone as expected? Quite right to be disappointed, but no need to create a potential negative whirlpool on loan. Brian Stubbs v Millwall, 1976, as Ian Cooksey, dropping his shorts after being sent off. That's quite right. Yes, that's right. I think he dropped his shorts first and then got sent off. I can't quite remember which way around he did it, but I was only 13 at the time. But yeah, look, I mean, the curse of social media, as far as I'm concerned, the sooner Elon Musk shuts down X or Twitter or whatever it is, the better. For people's mental health. Twitter, professional footballers last year had a day, didn't they, when they stopped using Twitter for 24 hours in protest because of ongoing racist tweets that seem to appear regularly from fans towards players. One point, which is quite ironic, everyone loves Connell. Connell's a fantastic player, brilliant player. Connell decides to take issue with a fan. The aforementioned Twitterati weighed in. Well, he was rubbish against Milton Keynes. We probably need him to go. He's no different a player before or after he made that tweet. I just find the sheer irrationality of Twitter, to be honest with you, quite absolutely staggering. We've discussed it. let's move on. And Connell, been on this show, top guy, gives his all for the club. It's what he does on the pitch for us. Draw a line under it. Right, 15 minutes to go. Stel, Colchester, short trip. God, blimey, we've got some travelling coming up, haven't we? Colchester and Barrow in succession.
Yeah.
This. They were, I think they were the first team to beat Gillingham, weren't they? After Gillingham won 4 or 5 on the bounce. Away from home, I've got to say I think we've looked, from what you're telling me about Saturday, we've looked more comfortable away from home recently than we have at home. I mean, I've got to say, I have seldom felt more confident or assured. For me, us at Salford was like shelling peas. You know, I thought the way we matched that game, and yes, people can say Salford didn't do very well. Salford played as well as we allowed them to.
Yeah, now this is where I've got to plead a bit of the fifth, haven't I? Because I wasn't at Salford or MK Dons, so I didn't see. I've seen the highlights, and I've seen spoke to Dave and Adam and about them games, and spoke to people who were there, and the Salford game in particular sounded like almost the complete performance, and MK Dons, tough place to go, and got a decent result. Very nearly nicked it at the end, but I just think with Notts and with the way Notts play, they've got such a good way of playing. They've got such good players who know the roles, know the system, that I don't think it bothers them home or away. I think you could make a case for on the road, the home team that they're expected to make a bit more of the running, so then maybe they'd come out. But I think Notts at Meadow Lane have been fantastic. I think the big pitch, the quality of the pitch. I was saying to Dave before the game, you look at the Meadow Lane pitch, and I think, crikey, it used to be like that for about 3 games when I played. 3 games of the season, and after that, it was starting to cut up. It's an absolute carpet, and credit to the club, because they've obviously put some money into it, and the groundsmen have used that money and keep the pitch how it is. But it's just, I'll say the quality that Notts have got, I don't fear at home or away. I think if they play well, I think that they're in the game. I think they're in the game, and if they play really well, they win the game. It comes down to both penalty areas, as football always does. But I've got so much belief in this Luke Williams way of playing and the players that he's got in, that before every game I'm confident. Again, this division is a bit harder than the National League, so I'm not expecting the routes that we sort of ended up with a few times in the National League, but that doesn't mean I don't think we will rout a few teams. I think we will along the way. But again, it's about keeping them standards high. So, yeah, tough away game again. This is the one thing I think that's more relevant this season, and again highlights the difference between National League and League Two for me, is that every game this season will be going, it's a tough game. It's a potential tough game. It's going to be difficult. I think there are genuinely games in the National League where you go, well, this should be a 3 point. This should be 3 points, and that's the difference. You just get more quality spread about the division in League Two. So Colchester away is going to be tough, because every team pretty much in this division is capable of causing upset. You have to say that, with Sutton beating us 5 on the first day, and they're sitting bottom of the table.
I know. It's fine. Even allowing for all we know what football is like, I still find it quite incredible. That after, I think it was about 5:25 that game finished, wasn't it? If you'd said 8 games later, Sutton will be bottom and we will be top, I wonder what odds you'd have got on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, Colchester's going to be a tough game. I mean, again, people look at the league table. Oh God, they're down near the bottom, but it's early days. I say they've got a play. I remember they've got a guy called Cameron McGeehan playing now. He's just gone now. He's been out of the country. But he's a player. Remember when we were playing against Luton, before we went down in the National League?
Yeah.
He's a player that I liked then. He played in the middle of the park, so at number 10, attacking midfield player, shocker blonde hair, curly blonde hair. And I picked him out then. He was about 23, and he's gone on a decent career for Luton. I think he's Portsmouth, and I think he went out of the country as well, but he's just come back. And Colchester have got him, and I thought, well, I think he's only about 28, 29. And I think, well, he's a decent player to be playing at this level. Now, I don't know what's happened in between. I don't know whether he's had injuries or what have you. But, you look at that and you go, look, if on the day these players perform, then like we saw at Sutton, if you don't keep your standards, you get beat any game. But if Notts play how we know they can play, then I've got no fear about Colchester. And one thing about Colchester is it is going to be a decent pitch down there as well.
Yes, they got the new stadium, haven't they? Ian
Yeah.
says, we've just played 4 teams who were 2 leagues higher than us last season and haven't lost and haven't looked like losing to any of them. Chris Gossing says, I think Mansfield struggled at Colchester recently, didn't they? Don't know what to expect Saturday, but with October's fixture list, it will be great to bring 3 points back. Itcharia says, the foundations of this club is the best that I've seen, from owners to the way we play. It's the very best. Who's on comms with you Saturday, Stel? Do you know yet?
Dave, yeah, it'll be Dave again. Dave Bracegirdle.
Yeah, very good. What else have we got coming up? Ruben Rodriguez gets a mention. Nice to see Ruben get his first goal for Oxford on Saturday, says Andy Easom. Andrew Blatherwick, I thought the graded price structure for buying the tickets was a novel idea. Not sure if other clubs will follow suit. Sold about $7.50, I think, so far, which is a good effort. Yeah, I think depending when you've bought your ticket, see, it goes up £1 or £2 at a time. I thought I'd got mine, but then I realised I haven't, so I need to go and get one. I've got my Barrow one already. 3 games in a week. And now you come from an era when you wanted to play every minute of every game, Stel. 3 league games in 7 days. You're kind of expecting the manager to be rotating 1 or 2 here and there over the course of those games?
Yeah, I mean, let's have it right. I think the players nowadays still want to play every minute of every game. I think it's sort of taken out of their hands a little bit. I expect a few changes. I don't think we'll be talking wholesale changes as we might get for a EFL Trophy game or something like that. But I think, that he will manage rotation, whatever you want to call it. He will manage the squad, and it comes back down to the thing that I say. I think Luke Williams has shown that he trusts all these players. Sam Austin comes in for Aaron Naman on Saturday. He trusts them. He even swaps him and Jody Jones around, left side and right side. It doesn't matter. He trusts them, whichever side of the pitch they play. He trusts these players in the squad. So he's got no qualms about making changes if the analysts or the physios tell him, look, so-and-so's looking a little bit jaded, or his data's saying he looks a little bit tired, fatigued, maybe near an injury. Again, I don't know how they work that out, but he will have no qualms in bringing players out if they need to come out, and put them on the bench or give them a breather. He will utilise that squad fully because he believes that the quality is strong enough throughout the squad. Make no mistake, he sets the team up every game to win every game, but he trusts there's 17, 18, 19 players that he can put in and believe will get the job done.
As a player, you've gone top of the league, so you feel, it's early doors, but you feel, I would imagine, fairly satisfied with yourself. Can't do much more than be top of the league after 9 games, can you? Luke was fairly critical from what I could hear in his aftermatch conference. Where do you think Luke is? He's deep down, he's like bursting with pride. We're top of the league. Crikey, this is brilliant. Or is it a case of, actually, I can get into the lads a bit after Saturday now because they were sloppy on Saturday and I can just bring them down a couple of pegs?
Well, no, I don't think either. I don't think he'd be bursting because I genuinely don't think any manager puts any stock in the table. Certainly not at this stage of the season. And I think his reaction on Saturday was genuine about the second half, particularly not the first half, but the second half, because they allowed Forest Green to ruffle our feathers so much that we didn't get control of the game. Now, again, part of that is again down to opinions. You've got to give Forest Green credit for that. Notts are a good team, and Forest Green managed to ruffle them, win the second half 3-2, very nearly take something from the game. But Luke Williams isn't bothered about Forest Green. He's bothered about Notts, and I think his reaction was a genuine one to say, I didn't expect my players to allow themselves to be so upset by Forest Green because they didn't put an extra 3 players on. It was just a case of Notts weren't able to cope with it or didn't get to the standards they set themselves in the first half. And at any level, at any game, if you do that, you can get punished. So I'm sure he will say get into them, but I'm sure he will let them know, look, this isn't good enough, that's not good enough. Look what you were doing well in the first half. Why did it change in the second? And they'll analyse it and look at the differences between the two. But I think he's very honest. I think he is very honest. And again, there's a contrast. I listened to Forest Green manager's post-match interview, and obviously I listened to Luke's as well after Saturday. It's easy to be honest when you're sat top of the table. You've just got a promotion under your belt from the National League. You can do no wrong, so you can be critical a lot easier. I thought David Burnside, Horseman, David Burnside, is that David Horseman? But it's off the billing. I don't know. But anyway, David Horseman's Forest Green's manager post-match interview where he was saying, we murdered them second half, and there was not a lot in it first half, and that's the sort of interview you give when you're 9 games into a job and you've only got 7 points out of 9, and you've got to try and emphasise the positives because there are people paying your wages who've employed you to say, hold on a minute, we've just come out of League One and now we're down the bottom of League Two. So, you've got to read between the lines of what managers say sometimes, and the truth is sometimes in between. But I think Luke is very, very honest, very, very honest post-match, which is not always easy because managers like to look at the data and analyse things and re-watch things. But I think his reaction in terms of not being happy was genuine. I would say I called it on the radio. I don't think there'd be any manager that would be particularly happy with the second half performance. As a whole, they're happy. He's happy they've won the game, but he's not happy with how they've done it because he works so meticulously Monday to Friday, or Sunday to Friday, if you want to call it, between the games to give Notts a framework and a game plan and a way of doing things, to give them all the tools to go out and perform and not allow a team to upset them in the second half like they did do. But that's the beauty of football. You've always got an opponent who are also entitled to come up with a plan and a way of upsetting you. And like I say, coaches particularly like control of a football match. The second half had no control about it really whatsoever. It was chaos. And from chaos, some unexpected things can happen. And it very, very nearly did on Saturday.
In regards to team selections with the 3 games in a week, Ian Cooks, he says it's not just the 3 games, it's the long journeys for 2 of them. The staff seem to take things like that into account. Wayne Wilkins, be honest, who doubted Ruben's move to Oxford? Come on, own up, playing regularly in what seems a very good side. Yes, certainly Oxford in a very good early position as well. Stephen Ramage, Luke trusts the players trust Luke, and they trust each other. I have not seen a team so together in a long time. Ian Cooksey adds, Luke wants more and he wants better, which is fantastic and makes him a winner. Nathan, Luke is the most honest manager I have seen maybe ever. There you go. A very genuine guy. Yeah, and I think also obviously there's been, we'll wrap it up, but we spoke a bit about Connell, but you know a lot of the players still. I'm fortunate to know a lot of them. They're as well as executing their duties on a game day very well and meticulously to the orders from the gaffer. I think they're a very good set of characters. They're good communicators. They do a lot of the media work. They do lots of sort of things for our podcast, for Notts County Talks podcast. They're very honest, open, very transparent. There's quite a few of them do a lot of charitable work that goes unnoticed, that isn't reported on. They don't do it to garner publicity or anything. I do think at this moment in time, your point is entirely right, Stel, about, look, it's only 9 games, don't get carried away. But I do think potentially, big word, potentially, as well as being very, very well set up and as well as having players that are delivering on the pitch, I think there is a very good camaraderie and a very good set of lads who are all honest characters. And I'm sure in your time there would have been some dressing rooms that would have perhaps been better set up and more enjoyment, shall we say, than others. And that whole fabric is a very important part of the mix that goes into getting results. Yes.
Oh, it's absolutely vital. I don't think you can achieve success with an unsettled dressing room. I just don't think it's possible. It's absolutely vital. And you know, one thing I will say, Paul, is I do try to keep my distance from the players, you know, because I like to. I don't want, you know, I don't want to be. Well, I want to be honest when I'm on the radio. I want to be able to say, you know, he's had a bad game or he's had a great game or whatever. But I don't want that to be tainted by knowing them or being friends with them, and then you know, I'm going to take it easy on him, or you know, I don't. You know, I give my honest opinion about what I see in front of me, and what I see in front of me certainly over the last few years, to be honest, but you know, over recent times, I would say without fail, I've seen no example of anything other than all the players in the squad being together and being a credit to the club. Right, and that is based on, you don't hear any, okay, the like I say, I don't see the social media bit, so I don't know what's happened there, but if it is, you know, it might just be a case of, oh, do you know what, sent in anger, delete a tweet, okay, should have thought, but whatever. But I think, to a man, these players are a credit to Notts County Football Club. I think for what they've given on the pitch, particularly because that's what footballers are always going to be judged by. But what they do off the pitch, the way they carry themselves, there's no negative stories or hardly any negative stories coming out about any of them. And I think that shows on the pitch, in the interviews. Like I say, I've been an ex-player, so I sort of know. You can sort of pick up in interviews here and there. They're not always, you know, before or just after a game. You pick up on the Tuesday or the Thursday interviews, and just something might be said that gives you a bit of an inkling to, that don't sound like a good dressing room or whatever. I've heard none of that. And don't get me wrong, I'll imagine that they'll be chirping at each other, there'll be banter flying around, there'll be, you know, some who get on better with a few than others, like any dressing room, like any collection of 20 plus men or women or whatever. You're not going to be best mates with all of them. But in terms of doing your job, being professional, doing it to the best of your ability on the pitch, and being a credit to the club, and not being, you know, a stain off the pitch, and then I think they're excellent. I would still call it how it is. If they're terrible on Saturday, I'll tell them they're terrible on Saturday. But I hope they're excellent Saturday, and we're eulogising even more and waxing lyrical about them again when we come back with 3 points from Colchester.
Ian Cooksey will wrap up with two very positive tweets. The same thing happened, messages. The same thing happened with the 70, 71, 72, 73 squads, and we got 2 promotions out of 3. If you ever gets a chance, talk to Les Brad. He will tell you how good the dressing room was. Chris Gosling, the way we play with identity, meticulous planning, and attention to detail makes me confident that we can replicate our performances week in, week out. Dedication starts at the top and carries through. Yeah, 2 good tweets to end on. Right, I'm going to bed in a minute. I'm a bit tired. I was up at 5. So, but I should be there at Colchester, as will you, Stel. Thank you very much for joining us again tonight. Good to have you back. Good to be back after our international mini break. Busy week next week. We'll be back next Monday. And here's fingers crossed to 3 points and staying top when we entertain Swindon a week on Tuesday. Cheers, Stel.
Cheers, mate.